All right, guys, so today's episode is brought to you by Shortform, the official sponsor of Good Bro, Bad Bro. Shortform is an awesome website. They basically take really well-known and established books of a variety of genres and authors, and then they give an expert summarization of them. Not only do they summarize the book, but they have discussion points, they have related themes between other books. It's basically like a book summary on steroids. It's super useful, especially if you're a guy like me that's very busy and you love reading lots of books, but you often tend to forget all of the things that you learn from the book just because there's so much going on. Short form is perfect for going back and remembering everything that you read in the book originally, as well as extra information. So if you guys click the link in the bio, you can get your first 6 months for 20% off and 5 days for free by using our link. So for today's episode, we have a buddy of mine named Alex, aka Playing with Fire. He is known as the expert for online dating on YouTube. He just hit 100,000 subscribers, and he's been posting content for years about Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, pretty much every dating app there is known to man. He also enjoys debating and having on critics so that he can have mature conversations and discussions with those that disagree with him, as well as the information that he's sharing on YouTube. Today we're going to go over online dating, how to make the best possible profile, what the best messages are, what the best bio is, pretty much everything involving online dating you are going to need to be successful in 2022. It's going to be in this episode. So before we get started, hit the like button and enjoy the video.
And I'm feeling good. I like a dude who fucks his wife up and then gets it back together. Purpose.
Alex, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's a pleasure.
So I was on your podcast a couple weeks ago, and we went way down the rabbit hole, man. We ended up going from talking about dating and YouTube to like the woke nation, politics, New World Order. It went down pretty deep. But for those that haven't heard of you before, give us a background on you and what your channel's all about.
Sure. My name is Alex. I run a channel called Playing with Fire. We're all about giving like practical, tangible, no bullshit tips. So if you want a bunch of like theory type of stuff, something that's abstract or circle jerking, mental masturbation, that's not the right channel. We just try to focus and make things really as practical as possible. Primarily, we do online dating, but we also cover all the host of other things involved in online dating. So for example, like you want to be good at Tinder, you need good photos. You want good photos, well, you probably need to get in shape. You know, you want to also need good fashion. So everything that, stems from that, we usually try to cover as well.
Right off the bat, you said no bullshit dating advice. What do you think is some of the most bullshit dating advice that you hear nowadays, especially when it comes to online dating?
Oh, man. Like, I think that 95% of the dating advice you hear is largely bullshit or fluff. It really depends on what genre we pick. So does it mean, are we looking at red pillars or like the blue pill social justice warriors? Because they're going to give a different kind of dating advice, but it's going to be bullshit for a different reason. So for example, in the blue pill, like the mainstream, whatever, SJW type of advice is just like, oh, just be confident, just be yourself, just be genuine, right? And like, what the fuck are you supposed to do with that information? Like, oh, I never thought about that. Be genuine.
Yeah.
In the red pill community, you'll hear more stuff like, oh, once you get your finances in order, once you level up as a man, like, your dating life takes care of itself, right? As if like girls have an app that says like, oh, Johnny from down the street leveled up. I better go over there and suck his dick. So it's just, you hear different kinds of nonsense, but it's still nonsense in the day. It's just different.
I just thought of this question now. It's a little bit out of order, but like, I know that your main thing is online dating, but you also have content as far as like in-field approaching and stuff like that. What balance would you recommend to the average man in 2022? Like, what percentage of the time that he's working towards, meeting women should be in real life versus online versus social circle, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it really depends on your situation and where you're at and what your strengths and weaknesses are. So for example, back when I was working in sales, I was working 60 hours a week. I had like no time for cold approach. So it was like 100% online. I just simply didn't have time. But when I was like bored in a meeting or I was like stuck in traffic, I could do some messaging, right? But cold approach requires a bigger time investment. Let's say, for example, on the other hand, you have a lot of free time on your hand, but you don't have good photos and you're still a little bit out of shape. So you got some time before you can get good photos. Well, at that point, you might rely on cold approach. Let's say you are connected through a cool social circle. Like let's say you're into photography or something like that. Well, then you want to leverage that. So it really just comes down to what your time commitments are. I would say that's the first thing. And second, what your strengths and weaknesses are. Like if you have a cool social circle you could utilize, that might be the best way to go, because you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. The problem is a lot of guys, their social circle is just a bunch of other dudes who are trying to get laid. So there's not much they can do with that.
Got you. Okay. So as far as, dating in 2022, we're seeing all these statistics that, I saw one recently that on dating apps, men swipe right approximately 60% of the time, and women only swipe right about 5% of the time. I hear statistics like that, and it just, crazy shit. Like, 70% of the users are men. Of the 30% that are women, approximately 12% are bots. Do you have any other mind-blowing stats like that about dating apps that most people don't know that would change how they look at dating?
Yeah, well, I think all the dating stats are pretty depressing. So I don't think there's any ones that are like, I'll try to bring it back to something positive though. So
Yeah.
yes, all that stuff is true. It's insanely competitive. We've done, you covered this, I think, in one of your live streams, but we did a video, we did an experiment as a girl, as a guy to see discrepancy in matches. One interesting experiment that I'm doing right now, which I'm going to release in the next few days, which is pretty mind blowing, is we took my photos, right, and we went on Face App and we turned me into a woman, right? You just click a button and it just gives you long hair and shit, and it does away with your facial hair. The tranny version of Alex got 1,000 likes in 24 hours versus the regular version of Alex gets like 10 likes every 24 hours, right?
Dude, that's fucked.
Massive discrepancy. I don't know. Like it's like, how good could someone possibly look with an app just adding long hair to them? Well, apparently I look pretty fucking good. And dude, it was pretty funny because we were like kind of trolling with the guys a little bit. I was like, well, actually, it was my girlfriend that was doing the texting, but I was like having her troll the guys. So she would be like, oh, I have a big surprise to you with like an eggplant emoji. And some of the guys didn't even give a shit. They're like, oh, okay, sure. Right. So the dating marketplace is really, really competitive. That's the bad news. The good news is that most of your competition sucks. So last night we did a live stream where we spent 2 hours just breaking down people's profiles, like all 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
And these are people who already follow me, right? So you would assume that they already have access to good information. They already know some basic stuff.
Yeah.
Every single profile with the exception of one. So we maybe went through 30 profiles, 29 of them sucked balls. Like really bad. Like we're talking if the guy's a 7 and his profile is that of like a 3, right? So that's the good news, is that most of your competition has no idea what they're doing and they suck, right? So it's very competitive, but most of your competition sucks. That's kind of like the pro and con.
Gotcha. Okay. I know you ran that Tinder experiment that we featured in an episode a couple of weeks ago. What are some of the Tinder experiments that you have run, and what were the results that you got from them?
So yeah, we've done quite a few. One was we took photos of like a regular guy, then a male model to see the difference in likes. The regular guy got like 30 likes in 24 hours. The male model got 130 likes, which is pretty big difference, but not drastic. I think a much more drastic difference was when we did a girl who's like grossly overweight. Like we're talking about a chick who's a 1, and she got 500 likes in 24 hours, and guys were begging her to hang out. So that shows you that a really unattractive girl does significantly better than a male model, right? That kind of puts things in perspective. I had a feeling that it would be something like that, but I didn't know it was going to be that bad. Like I thought maybe a male model and a fat girl would do the same, like, but I didn't know like the fat girl was going to do way better. And guys were like begging her to hang out. They were like treating her as if she's like the last girl on earth. So those are some of the experiments. Like another experiment that I want to do, but we never were able to do, is because we kept getting banned, was to actually see how far guys will simp. So create a profile with an attractive girl and see how much money you can get from the guys. Obviously, we'll give the money back to them right afterwards. We wouldn't like actually give the money, but just to see if you could get random guys on Tinder to send you like $500. But we kept getting banned. So I think I'm going to bring that one back and try it again at some point. But yeah, there's like a lot of really fascinating stuff you can like experiment with if you're creative.
Have you ever experimented with women in the profile picture versus the profile picture of you without women? Because on paper, pre-selection is a massive component of attractiveness of males. Like the status that is shown when you have multiple women in the photo with you is, it communicates that not only can you get with these women, but whoever's looking at that self-consciously or subconsciously rather, they're going to be comparing themselves. Okay, well, if he can get with these kind of girls, then, how do I stack up against those girls, right? Am I more attractive? Am I less attractive? So that's something that a lot of women think about subconsciously when they see a man with women. But at the same time, a lot of women have said that, on dating profiles, if you have a picture of you with any other girl, regardless of whether it's like your sister or your friend, they're automatically going to think it's your ex-girlfriend and they're going to swipe left because it's trashy. What are your thoughts on that? And have you run any experiments switching between the two?
We've never run that experiment, but I think it's definitely unless you're going for the threesome angle. So if you're going for the threesome angle, I think yeah, that's a good idea. But aside from that, I think generally speaking, it's not a good idea. Like every time I've done these like live swiping sessions where I would sit next to a girl and just screen record swiping through her Tinder. And every single time there's a photo of like a guy with another girl, that's usually an automatic left swipe. I
Right.
think another thing to think about is that guys who get laid a lot, would they really need to show that on Tinder, or would they want to be more low key and discreet about it, right? So like it may seem on the surface that like, oh, he has options, but I think it's better to be much more subtle about it. So maybe if on your Instagram there's a story and you can see like a girl's legs, right? It's like more subtle that way, then that could actually accomplish that goal. But if it's like blatantly in your face, like you and a girl, I think that's like too in your face. Like if you are going to take that angle, then it should be like maybe a group photo, right? Where there's guys, girls, looks like a cool group of people hanging out, daytime pool party, not like a nightclub. That could work. But just like you and a girl or you and several girls, I think it's going to backfire way more often than it's going to succeed. Unless, of course, you are going for that threesome angle, right? And your whole profile is centered around the idea of having a threesome, in which case, yeah, that's like what you want to do.
The reason I say that is because I was talking to Michael Sartain the other day. I know you
Mm,
had him on your
yeah.
episode as well. And he was talking about what works for him as the most successful thing is, social media proof, but that's a whole different thing. That's on like an Instagram versus
Mm.
a dating app. So it's a different thing. But I mean, that would be a good experiment to see if that translates over. But I've pretty much heard the same thing as what you said with, the girls automatically swipe left.
I
Yeah.
think if you're like a Michael Sartain or like Dan Bilzerian, for sure that could work. But then their whole it has to do with your marketing and your brand. Their whole brand is guys who party who get a lot of girls. So it's like it makes sense, right? But I think that's
Right.
a little different because none of those guys I think are on Tinder or anything. I think it's a little different when you have that on your like your Tinder profile. I know other people who are like less famous than them who do take that angle, but it's usually not on dating apps, usually like on their Instagram. And usually they're a bit more subtle about it. Like you'll just see like some girl in the background, but it's like the girl is not the focus. It's like something else is the focus, and it just so happens that the girl is there.
Absolutely, man. So good thing you noted on though was on Instagram. You put these, subtle communications that this is implied, like the legs are in a photo or they're in the background or something on a story. How different is it when you get a match and send an opening message on Tinder versus some random girl on Instagram that you don't follow, you've never met her before, but you're going into the DMs cold, almost as if you're sending an opening message, but you guys never swiped. Do you follow first? Do you not follow? Do you like a post? Do you reply to a story? What is your slide on Instagram?
Yeah, so the first important thing to know is that the barrier to entry on Instagram is a lot higher for cold DMs. It's way more competitive because guys from across the world are sliding into her DMs if she's attractive.
Yeah.
She hasn't liked your photo yet, so the success rate is going to be lower and the barrier to entry is going to be higher. Like you legitimately need a good profile. Like if you think you can just like pull off like chicks from Instagram with like 5 or 6 photos, like that's not going to happen. You legitimately like that's the biggest barrier to entry is you need a good profile. In terms of like the optimal way to do it, I've tried around with different things. I like the idea of following girls. So I'll just follow like 50 girls, right? And I'll see which ones follow me back. And if they follow me back, then I slide in their DMs, right? That can work. And if she likes several of your photos, that's even better. Replying to story is usually one of the best idea, like something like a witty, fun observation about her story. Usually with Instagram, you don't want to go too direct, although I have seen examples of guys going very direct on Instagram and that working too. There's different strategies you can take, but the big difference is on Tinder you have that social contract, right? Like she found you attractive, you find her attractive, so this is unspoken social contract. On Instagram, it
Mm.
doesn't exist because you're just literally a random person sliding in her DMs. So what that means, what that translates into is that you can't expect as much from her. So like, for example, if a chick on Tinder doesn't respond to your opener, you can like playfully call her out. You can't really do that to that extent on Instagram because there's not that social contract. You're just a random person. So you also have to work a little harder to build comfort and attraction and investment on Instagram than you do over Tinder, right? On Tinder, you can have a few messages back and forth and then you go for the meetup, right? On Instagram, not so much.
I like that. That's a that's a good term, bro. Social contract. Another thing I've heard is social capital, which means like the jokes you can get away with, the things you can ask, dependent on your social capital, your value, and all that. So Instagram is obviously a lot different than dating apps, but how different have things gotten as far as dating apps 3 or 4 years ago to now? Because last time I really fucked with dating apps was at least 2 years ago, maybe longer. And even when I did do it, I never really took it seriously. It was basically just to rack up kills. And it was a lot easier, I remember, in like 2016, 2017, when I first turned like 18, 19. How different is it now than it was back then? Like, how have you had to change your profile, change your strategies, and adapt to the new standards of online dating?
I think it definitely gets more and more competitive every year. Even like going back to the pandemic, like I was finding it way easier to get dates during the pandemic than I am now, which is ironic. Well, it's just one, your profile has to stay ahead of the competition. So I think like the kind of profile I had 4 years ago would probably do like jack shit now. Like you constantly have to evolve. Two, you have to run higher volume. So, you know, like if you want, like in Miami, it's like a 90% flake rate. So if I want to get laid with one girl, I have to set up like 10 dates.
Fuck, man, that's crazy, bro.
It's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Now, granted, it's usually not as bad in other places. Like if you're in Europe or even like Midwest America, like it's not going to be nearly as bad. I just think Miami is like one of the most competitive cities. But yeah, you just have to run higher volume. You have to diversify amongst different dating apps. Another thing that I do is I've been pretty public about that. I use Seeking Arrangement as a lead source. So you can actually use that without actually paying girls money. You can just use it as a way to meet girls.
Okay, yeah. So we're going to go over all the different dating apps and what differences there are on them. So start out with that one, Seeking Arrangement. Like, what is that and how are guys gaming it, I suppose?
The cool thing about Seeking is, as of now, there's not a lot of guys who are actually using it like the way I am, which is a way to meet girls. Like most of your competition on Seeking is just old married dudes who are trying to cheat on their wives or like pay for sex. Your competition on there is a lot lower, right, than other dating apps. And as a result of that, you stand out a lot more. You're going to get way higher interest. Girls are going to open you more. They're going to be more receptive. You're going to be able to get with a higher caliber of girls. And this has a universally been experienced with all my clients. Like if they try Seeking, they're like, dude, I've never hooked up with a chick this hot. Like that's something I hear like time and time and time again. The downside with it is that it fucking takes a toll on your soul because you got like some of the like worst, let's just say, people on the planet on there, like the biggest gold diggers. And like it's also like you're playing a different kind of game. Yeah, I mean, we can get more in depth into that if you want, but it's like you're running a different kind of game. And it's not it's I would say it's less enjoyable. The experience on there is less enjoyable than that of like dating apps, but it's a lot easier. So it's pros and cons.
Yeah, from what I understand on there, it's like you're basically implying that you have all this money and status and you're an awesome person, but you don't want to pay. So what you're doing is kind of like setting. I mean, you're trolling a little bit, but it's like, hey, like, you know, I know you're looking for people that are paying, but if you're looking for somebody that's awesome and epic and isn't going to pay, but, you know, would be fun, then, you know, here I am. So I guess you're standing out against, like a bunch of old guys that are paying versus, oh, this guy's actually kind of cool. Whereas if you go on a regular dating app, there's going to be all these high status guys that you're competing with, and then the social contract's different. Is that more or less what it is?
So yeah, that's a more ethical way of doing it for sure. What some guys do.
There's unethical ways on it. Okay.
Oh yeah, way more. Is you lead is basically like leading the girl on and implying that maybe if she meets your tryout, that later on there might be something. Obviously, you're not explicitly ever promising the girl anything, but maybe you're making her think that, oh, you know, if she just does a good job during your date, which means usually banging you, then maybe there'll be something down the line. Maybe you'll consider her as your sugar baby. So there's different levels you can take it to.
My buddy Hunter once said that, okay, so there's catfishing. That's what happens to men, where you meet a woman and she doesn't look like her pictures. Right. And men can get catfished too. Women can get catfished as well. But the opposite gender version of getting catfished is when a woman hooks up with a guy thinking he's wealthy, he owns this nice condo, drives this car. Next day, she finds out it's all a rental. He doesn't actually own anything. He's not who he says he is. He paid for his followers. He basically didn't lie about his appearance, but he lied about his status and wealth, which is what
like lifestyle fishing or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like the female catfish, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when I was like first getting into Seeking, which was around like 2017, when I first learned about it, I wanted to see how far I could take it. I was just curious. So back then, I didn't really have much money. Like, yeah, now I'm like fairly well off with the business, but back then, like PWF was just getting started. So I was like, I don't know, maybe middle class at best. But so I wanted to see how far I could take it. So I put my what's it called? Like net worth at like $5 million. And then no one called me out on it. So then I moved it to $20 million. I think by the end I had it set to like 1 billion or something, or like 100 million, like something so ridiculous, like not congruent with what I am. I just wanted to see how far I could take it. And honestly, if you have good frame control, you can pull it off.
That's insane, dude. So, okay, before we get into the different dating apps, I'm going to assume you're using Seeking, Tinder, Hinge, Bumble.
So that was my go-to for a while. But recently I've been like scourged off every dating app, Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. All keep banning me. And I think that's because of my YouTube channel. So now I use Seeking. Field hasn't banned me yet. And
what's Field? I've never heard of Field.
Field is like actually Field is pretty cool. It's like I don't know how to describe it. It's like a more explicit version of Tinder. It's just like purely for sex. It's like a threesome or like whatever, just casual sex type of app. Like It's very explicit. Like you can actually have nudes on there.
Okay, before you got nuked, what was your split between the apps? Seeking, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge.
Of the girls I was meeting was coming from each. You know, actually before I was even banned off Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, like I didn't even really need Seeking because I was getting like had enough leads coming in. So I would say it was like, I don't know, maybe like 30, 30, 30. Maybe Bumble was like 40 or 50 and the other ones were like 25% each. And some cold approach sprinkled in there as well, maybe like
not even cold approach. I mean, just the apps.
It really also just depends on your area and stuff. But for me, I think it was like 50% Bumble and then 25% other ones, like 25%.
Dude, why do you think that was Bumble? Because you're in fucking Miami, right? You'd think, okay, and I'm thinking, why would Bumble work the best in Miami? Maybe it's because there's a lot of women there that have they've been with enough fuckboys that they've flown way too close to the sun. And they're like, I want something more serious. I'm going to find the serious guys on Bumble. Is that, I mean, what would you think would be the reason you did the best on Bumble?
I think it was that. I think it's also the fact that like at this point, I'm really picky and I have like fairly high standards looks wise. And Bumble out of those three generally attracts the most attractive girls. So it was like, I was also like, there was more of like the type of girls that I wanted. So as a result of that, I was getting more dates. Like, let's say I'm getting the same amount of matches on Tinder and Bumble, but 50% of the girls I match with, I find attractive on Bumble, and 20% on Tinder, I'm going to get more dates from Bumble just by virtue of that. So I think that was another factor. I do think Bumble probably attracts like the most attractive girls out of those three.
If you want to learn the proper way to talk to women and transform your dating life, be sure to check out the Den Most Social course. Den Most Social is our best-selling video course that teaches you how to get real confidence, real results, and meet your next girlfriend. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description and completely transform your dating life. For those of you that need direct help with your specific dating issue, I also offer one-on-one coaching and consulting. The topics that I specialize in and can help you with include approach anxiety, communication, confidence, getting a girlfriend, maintaining a relationship once you have one. That's a big thing where a lot of guys mess up. They let themselves go once they do get into a relationship, as well as getting over a breakup, building a social circle, and much, much more. I still have about 50% availability for this month, so be sure to click the link in the bio below and save your spot. Book a call now. For somebody watching, right, they could be short, they could be tall, they could be rich, they could be poor, they could be funny, they have great photos, all spectrums of different people, right? And you got these main four apps. You got Seeking, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge. Of each of the four apps, what would be a definition or, similarity, a commonality between the guys that perform the best on all four of those? And what I mean by that is like, if you're a funny guy with a really good personality, you would probably stand out on Hinge because you can reply to prompts, right? Versus on Tinder, it's going to favor somebody that is, good looking, has an amazing profile. Bumble, maybe it prefers somebody that is a certain height because there's no height on Tinder, but there is on Bumble. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at? Like, what would be the four archetypes for each of the apps?
Well, let's take Seeking out of it for a second because that one is just so different. But between Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge, it's by far photos. Like the quality of your photos is like just so much more important than your prompts or your bio or anything else. So good photos is going to be universally well rewarded by each one of those apps, and bad photos are going to be universally punished. So I think that's definitely like photos is like, like one of the most important thing when it comes to dating apps by far. So I think that's definitely a thing. Um, I think that with seeking, I don't think seeking, I would not recommend seeking for beginners. I think seeking is
So
more like
seeking's probably for like intelligent people. You know what I mean?
for
Or
people who have
advanced with this
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of thing.
people who have game because you need to know how to navigate those situations where the girl is like potentially a gold digger but potentially not. You need to know what girls to screen out. So I would not recommend that for like a beginner at all. Um, I think also the people who universally do well on dating apps are the ones who don't get faced by rejection. Some guys get like way too phased by like rejection. And yeah, like you're going to get flaked on. You're going to get girls disappearing out for no reason. If that really phases you, you're not going to make it far in dating apps. You're not even going to make it far when it comes to dating in general, but certainly not dating apps. So guys who are like that, guys who really view it as like a strategy game and don't take things personally and just like keep trying to optimize. So the guys who really take this stuff personally, again, they're not going to do well on dating apps.
Well, I guess what I was getting at is like, I have a lot of friends that, they do really well, but only on one dating app, right?
Mm.
So, on Hinge, they do really good because they're funny, they have good opening lines, and they have a lot of interests, which I guess, when you look at the profile, you kind of gather that kind of information. Guys that don't do well on Tinder are probably guys that swipe right a lot, which means they probably don't have the impulse control, the discipline control to like time the actual swiping. My one buddy told me that Tinder pays attention to how long you look at each profile. If you click all the photos, go through all that. I don't know if that's bullshit or not, but essentially people that just swipe right without looking, especially on an app like Tinder, it just lowers their score, which fucks up their algorithm. And then Bumble, it's much more associated with, okay, well, there's a height, there's a weight, there's smoking, and there's all those preferences. And it's much more status. So if you're not the best looking guy, but you're in like early 30s, you have a good job, and it's implied that you're looking for serious commitment, then women would be much more paying attention to that on the Bumble app versus on the Tinder dating app. So does that kind of make sense what I mean?
Yeah, honestly, in my experience, from everything I've seen and all the clients I've seen, while that stuff may play a small role, it's like 5 or 10%. Like the biggest factor, like when it comes to the algorithm, the biggest factor by far is what percentage of girls swipe right on you and what percentage of girls swipe left on you. So you could like be super selective about your swiping. You could wait 10 minutes, but if a lot of girls are swiping left on you because your profile is not attractive, right, which is what determines that, you're still going to be fucked in the algorithm. So I really think that's the biggest thing is like if you can just get your photos good to the point where a lot of girls find them attractive, everything else doesn't really matter as much. Everything else takes care of itself. And if you can't do that, then everything else won't really make a difference either. Yeah, sure, there's like little things you can do. Like Tinder looks for the girls you match with. Are you talking to them? So you can make sure you talk to all the girls. There's little things like that. Yes, it does look at your left to right swipe ratio. But I think all that stuff like pales in comparison to the real big thing, which is what percentage of girls swipe right on you and what percentage of girls swipe left on you. I think the one thing that's a little different about Hinge is all these apps that give you an ELO score, right? So let's say Tinder rates you a 6, right? So it'll probably show you girls who are like 5s, 4s, 7s, 8s, occasional 9 or 10. Bumble does that too. Hinge is much more strict. So if Hinge thinks you're a 6, it's only going to show you 6s and below, more or less. So that's why a lot of guys are like, dude, I don't understand. On Hinge, I only see unattractive girls. And they think that there's not attractive girls on Hinge. But for me, I see a lot of attractive girls on Hinge because, again, Hinge is a lot more strict with what they show you based on your score, which is very interesting. The other ones are not as strict. The other ones, like, will show you a little bit of everything.
Yeah, okay, that's the kind of information I was trying to get out because, obviously, I think at this point it's common sense that, yeah, you have to have great photos before any of this even becomes relevant, right? Because if you don't have good photos in the first place, you're obviously fucked. How does the Tinder algorithm work exactly? Because from what I understand, when you first sign up, they want to encourage you to keep using it. So right away, they'll throw you to the top of the stack. You'll get a couple matches for 2 or 3 days. Then it drops off. And, that's when you're kind of pressured into purchasing an upsell, which would be Tinder Gold, Platinum, whatever. How does that stack work versus 30 days later? How does the stack work?
Yeah, so when you first join any one of these dating apps, actually, it's not just Tinder, you get what they call a new boost, right? So it artificially boosts your score in the algorithm for a few days. Once that wears off, you go back to your baseline, which is whatever it really thinks you are. And that, again, that largely is based on who swipes left and right on you. So that's why a lot of guys report that, when they first join an app, they get way better results than like a week later. Now, the mistake a lot of guys make is they keep like deleting and recreating the app. The problem with that is that used to work, but now you just get shadow banned for doing that. So that's not a good idea. I don't advise like deleting and recreating. What a lot of other guys do, which is what Tinder wants people to do, is pay for boosts, right? So you join Tinder, you get like 10 matches a day for a few days, and then you go down to like 1 match a day. So you might be thinking like, oh fuck, okay, well I better pay for a boost, right? And then it's like a heroin hit, right? You get that high, but then it goes back down. The problem, these apps are really sneaky. They're very, very good at making money, right? So this isn't a bunch of amateurs like, running these apps. It's like CEOs, marketing people who like really understand psychology and want to extract as much money as humanly possible. So what happens is when you do a boost, you get an artificial boost, but then you go below baseline. So let's say your baseline is 2 matches a day. You might go to 1 or 0 matches a day for a few days. And it thinks if it does that you'll buy more boosts, right? So it's like buying boosts is almost like shooting up like drugs, right? Like you get that high, but then you go lower than you would have normally gone. You don't just go back down to baseline, you go below baseline. And I don't have any like super hard data to support this. Obviously, Tinder will never admit this, but I would really stake my life on that. Like I have seen enough stuff to really support this theory. Another interesting thing that happens is if you buy what's it called? Whenever you get a paid version, you can only go up, you can't go down. So let's say you get Tinder Platinum, right? And then you decide to downgrade Tinder Gold. It's going to, again, penalize you in the algorithm, because if it does that, it thinks like you'll upgrade again to Tinder Platinum. So you have to keep this in mind with upgrading. You can go up, but you can't go down, right? So if you're like, oh, I'll try out Tinder Platinum. If I don't like it, I'll go down to Tinder Gold. Doesn't work that way, right? You're going to get penalized in the algorithm. We have a lot of mastermind members who report that. Me personally, I just use Tinder Gold. I don't think Tinder Platinum is necessary, but you can get it. But the thing is, you can't go back down to Gold. You have to just commit to doing Tinder Platinum, unless you like recreate everything.
Yeah, I know that there's a lot of documentaries out there about like how they are able to hook people on these apps, almost like a slot machine effect. It's basically gambling because you're refreshing and there's a new thing every time. So it just hooks people, and that's the point all along. Taking that to more, I guess, analytical, scientifically proven, algorithms and whatnot, is there any information or data you have on why certain profiles are successful and photos more so are successful? And what I mean by that is like, there's the rule of 2/3 principle in photography, where you have to fit into a certain, rectangular balance in the photo so that your eyesight is like a third of the corner of the photo. And basically, there's an art to having a balanced photo. Do you know any hard-backed data, I suppose, that has suggested certain photos being better than others based on the composition of the photo or anything like that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So I don't have any studies in relate to this. So this was all, I guess we can say, subjective. Right? Yeah,
anecdotal or whatever.
Yeah, but I am quite confident in all the things I'm about to say. Like I have tested this stuff like very thoroughly with like hundreds, if not thousands, of clients. So while there may not be a study backing up what I'm about to say, I would stake my life on it, like I said earlier. So I think there's really 3 factors that determine how good a photo is, right? The first one is actually the easiest one, and that's the quality of the photo, right? This used to be a bigger thing like 6-7 years ago when there was a big discrepancy between DSLR cameras and smartphones. Now smartphones are so good that you don't actually need a professional photographer, because the quality is going to be so good with your iPhone, whatever, like 12, right? Like most of my photos were taken on my smartphone that I used. I did quite well, more or less. Obviously not as good as the tranny version of me. But so like the quality of the photo can't suck. It can't be blurry. It can't be like pixelated. Like that's just like a bare minimum, right? But again, as long as you have like a decent smartphone and you understand basic lighting, like you shouldn't really have that issue. The second factor is how good do you look in the photo, right? So if you're like a 7 in real life, you should look like a 7.5 or 8 in your photo, and you can achieve that through lighting and angles. Girls have been really good at this for a very long time. Like, girls just always look more attractive in their like social media than do in real life quite often. Guys are notoriously horrible at that. So guys usually look worse in their social media than they do in real life. But like, it's time that guys also start playing the game. Like, I'm not saying catfish the girl, but I'm just saying use lighting and angles to your advantage, right? So lighting can make a big difference in how muscular you look. For example, if you have that like overhead lighting, like hitting your abs, you're going to look a lot more muscular than if you have like sideways lighting, right? So that's why, for example, when you go to a clothing store, right, and you're in the changing room, like, you ever notice how when you're in the changing room, you look better, like more or less than you do like regularly, right?
Yes.
Well, there's a reason for that. It's because they have the overhead lighting that hits you like that, and that makes you look better. And that it's designed so if you think you look good, you attribute it to the shirt and you buy the shirt, right? But it's not the shirt that made you look good; it was the lighting, right? So it's stuff like that you need to start utilizing for your photos. Lighting and angles. And the third component is how natural does the photo look? This is probably the most overlooked angle. So girls don't want photos that look like they belong to a LinkedIn profile or a job resume, or even taken by a professional photographer, right? So you don't want photos of you just like posing for the camera. What you want is natural looking photos. Like, basically the vibe you want to give off is that you were doing some cool activity and someone took a photo of you and you didn't even know the camera was there. That's basically the vibe you're trying to replicate. So those are really the big three, is again, and obviously this to some extent is going to be limited by your social market value. Like, if you're a 5, you're not going to get as many good, like, right, you're not there's a limit to it, right? It's not like you can get a perfect photo if you're like not a good looking guy, but I would argue if that's the case, then you should try to maximize your looks as much as possible as well. But what I was saying is, but you can look a little bit better with lighting and angles than you do in real life. But most guys are not doing that. They're looking worse. And most guys have post photos where they're like posing for the camera. And that's a hard no. Even if you look really good in the photo, if a girl sees that the photo looks posed, she's probably going to swipe left on you. So those are really the 3 big things. And if you can just do those, you're going to really maximize your results. And I guarantee you, like 98% of the guys are not doing that. Like, from what I've seen, like most guys do not even have these 3 basic principles down.
Okay, here's a question for you, actually, to follow up on that last bit. Have you ever made a profile as a girl just to see what the other guys' profiles are like and the good things they're doing? And what did you see? Like, were there any consistencies that you saw between the profiles besides the 3 things that you just listed? And were there any profiles that you're like, holy fuck, this is the craziest profile I've ever seen?
Crazy in terms of good or bad?
Good.
I'll be honest, I've done this experiment many times. I've never once learned anything new that I didn't already know. It's usually I'm just surprised by how bad some of the things people are doing are. I mean, I've definitely noticed that there's like some common mistakes that guys make. The biggest one, which I don't really understand, but it's so common, is picture in the car. So it's like a guy sitting behind the wheel and he takes a selfie. Like, for some reason, so many guys like want to show off that they know how to drive a car, which is really not that impressive. Like, if you're an adult, that you can drive a car, right? It's like not a big accomplishment. Like, it's like wiping your ass or something. But so many guys try to show that off. So many guys have like a fishing photo. Like, look at this, I caught a fish, which is like almost a meme at this point with girls. But yeah, no, there's nothing that I saw where I was like, holy shit, this is a good idea. It's more of just like, oh, same mistake over again. Oh, this is a mistake I didn't even know about. Oh, here's another dumb mistake. Oh, here's a bad opener. Oh, here's a guy being desperate, right? So it's more of just like, I see negative. I don't really see anything where I'm like, oh, wow, I can like apply this myself.
Fair enough. What is the best first picture to have on a dating profile?
It's got to be a photo that clearly shows your face. It's like, it can't be like a back shot or like a really zoomed out shot. So something that clearly shows your face, and ideally like the upper torso. Yeah, like something, like is not just a headshot, but like a full, like upper torso shot at least, like something that shows off that you're not like some obese or ultra skinny dude.
Got you.
Ideally, something where you're doing an activity, although that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. Like my primary photo, I'm not doing an activity. I'm just standing there with sunglasses, but it's a really good photo and it looks pretty chill. It doesn't look posed, so that's why I use it. But yeah, it's not really much. The only requirement is that you have to be like clearly visible in the photo. And a lot of guys don't even do that. Like you see their first photo, it's like 20 dudes. And it's like when girls see that, they just auto swipe left. They don't want to like try to figure out which one you are, or it's like super zoomed out, or it's like super zoomed in. You can like see up their nose. I mean, there's like so many fucking shit.
First picture, you want to do like a really good headshot, make it look candid, not staged, like a LinkedIn photo. And then if you have heights, a good body, a cool hobby, whatever, the second photo is to show your whole body, not just your upper half. And then the third photo would be, some kind of social proof, you with a group of people, you doing something cool. Fourth photo, humorous photo. 5 and 6, those are optional. It's mostly the first 4. What do you think about that order? And like, what other suggestions would you have that you recommend for second, third, fourth?
Yeah, the one part of that I would disagree with is the social proof photo. I think that's like a misconception that exists, is that you need to show social proof. But I don't have any social proof photos. None of my clients do. Or I mean, some of them do, but most of them don't. I don't think that's necessary. And I've asked girls about this. I've like done live swiping sessions. I don't really think you need social proof. You just need to show that you have a life, which is doing activities. But you don't really need a photo of you with friends.
Ooh, here's a question for you, man. Just thought of this. Do you have any data on, I mean, this would be cool data to have. What percentage of, women that do swipe right on guys, do they make that decision on the first photo, the second photo, the third photo? Do they just automatically know right off the bat? Or do they go through the whole profile, or do they just look at the first 2 or 3? Do you have any info on that?
Yeah. This goes back to the live swiping sessions I've done. So if a girl is going to swipe left, she can decide that off their first photo. So it's like each photo gives you like a chance, right? So if she likes her first photo, then she's going to go to your second photo. If she likes your second photo, she'll go to your third photo. And then if she likes all your photos, she'll check your bio sometimes. If all that checks out, she'll swipe right. Right. But at any point in this process, if there's something that's bad, you're going to get a left swipe. Right. So it's like that's why you're only as good as your worst photo. You have 3 great photos, 1 shitty photo. Well, that means your whole profile is shitty. Right. Because she's going to get that 4th photo and she's going to swipe left. So usually that's how it works. Like it's like each time she likes a photo, you just get to the next stage of the process.
So they like to go through all photos as opposed to just automatically deciding on one, usually?
From what I've seen, generally speaking, yes.
Okay. And
at least the girls who are serious about meeting up.
Right. Okay. What would you say are the best types of bios? Because, one piece doesn't fit all. I know some guys, they have like a massive length bio. Some guys, it's like their height and then like a BDSM joke. Other guys, it's something else. Like it's serious. Like, this is what I like to do. I like to travel, whatever. Let's say, Tinder, for example. What are the best 2 or 3 types of profiles that have worked well for you?
Yeah, good question. So I think it's first just very important to clarify what a bio can and cannot accomplish. A lot of guys are confused about this. They think that if they have a good bio, they can like build attraction. But a bio cannot build attraction. It can lose you attraction if it's a bad bio, but you're going to build attraction through the photos, right? The bio is not designed to build attraction. It's just maybe to a very small extent, but not really, right? So that's what a bio can do. What a bio can do is screen, right? Yeah. It can hook the girl, right? It can make you stand out. It can make a girl laugh. It can start a conversation. Those are the things a bio can accomplish. So with that in mind, what I think is a good type of bio is something that combines humor, sexualization, and a little bit of seriousness, right? So I like to combine those 3 elements in one bio. I can just like read what my bio used to be, but basically it starts off with 6-0 Miami, right? So just kind of giving those stats. My passion is traveling around the world and seductively whispering Russian in your ear, right? So that statement is like full of like little DHVs. It's like I travel, I speak a different language. It's kind of funny and tongue in cheek, right? So again, that provides a hook, right? So a lot of girls will be like, oh, when are you going to whisper Russian in my ear? Stuff like that. Then I have strengths, being dominant, BDSM, and great color, right? So a bunch of hooks. Oh, are you really great color? Or, oh, what kind of BDSM do you know? Weaknesses, great ass and accents. And then PS, blindfolds are more fun than turning lights off, like something like that. So you can see that it combines these principles. Like I tell her a little bit about myself. The whole thing is not just me kidding, but there's some humor in it. And there's also some sexuality. And that's the combination I like. Depending on your photos, you can tweak part of that equation. You can go more or less sexual. If you have a super nice guy profile, obviously you can't go like that sexual. It's going to make no sense. It does have to be somewhat congruent. If I was doing like a threesome profile, I would be like more sexual, right? So it just kind of depends on your angle in your photos. But that's the general formula that I like to follow.
Okay, so what did you find to be like? What was your favorite? What was your most successful? How long was it? Like 3 lines?
What I just mentioned, that's the profile I've had for a while, some variation of that. What I actually found to be the most successful, which you can no longer do because the SJW police came in, is to have a very 50 Shades of Grey story in the bio. So it would be like, imagine this scenario. And then I would just go like very 50 Shades of Grey. That used to work really well because it would make a lot of girls really curious and they would be like serious about meeting up because they'd be like, wow, can you really do that? You can no longer do that. That gets you like insta ban now. But
Gotcha.
that used to be the best. But now now that you can't do that, kind of what I mentioned, I find works the best.
Okay, so you agree that you should put your height in the bio,
If
right?
you're above a certain height,
Yeah, what is that height?
I think like you probably add like I'm like 5'11", I add an inch to it. Like you can add an inch or two. You don't want to add more than that. But I'd say like if you're 5'10", you can say you're 5'11" or 6 feet. Uh, yeah, I would say 5'10" or higher. If you're below 5'9", that's a big stretch to say you're 6 feet. I mean, you can still
Oh,
do
okay,
that.
gotcha. Yeah, yeah. Because a buddy of mine, he's 5'11". He puts 6'1", which I think is
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah. That's
So I'm
totally
six
fine.
two. So would I have to put 6'4" if I did that?
Nah, because you're getting diminishing returns. 6'2" is already really tall.
Okay. At what height would you recommend somebody doesn't use dating apps? And what I mean by that is like, it's just not worth the negative emotional and self-esteem repercussions of lack of success because of a certain height. Like what do you think would be the cutoff for like you should just stick to real life and social circle?
It's a good question. I think that one thing I will say is that you need to get to a mental point where your external success or lack of doesn't affect your self-esteem. So, like this was what I was kind of saying earlier, you cannot be the guy that gets like emotionally affected by your successes on Tinder because
Right.
you will burn out. I kind of got this from doing sales. You cannot like because most of the people whose doors you knock, they reject you and they reject you pretty harshly. Like, get out of my property, right? If that affects you even a little bit, by like 2 hours in, you're going to be devastated, right? So you have to get to a point where you're just completely, your self-esteem is completely separate from your external results, which is easier said than done, but it is doable. Um, I don't think there's a certain height at which like dating apps make no sense. I think you just wouldn't put your height if you're below 5'9". But like, let's be honest, if you're 5'2", any type of game is going to be hard. It's not like cold approach is going to be magical. Like most girls are going to like look at you like a little kid. So it's going to be hard across the board. I used to have a roommate that was 5'3", and he would meet girls off dating apps. Granted, they weren't the hottest girls, but he was happy with it. So yeah, I don't think there's a certain height at which dating apps make no sense. It just gets harder the shorter you are. But it's like that with all types of dating, like cold approach, whatever. Like, when have you ever seen a guy who's like 5'2", with the exception of Justin Mark, who like does well with girls? It almost never happens.
I saw these studies about like Bumble and how if you're not 6 feet or taller on the app, you don't show up to like 70% of the user base.
Mm.
So you're basically just punching air and competing with like a very smaller subset of users on there, at which point the ROI wouldn't necessarily be as good as like,
Yeah.
achieving status. And so that it's a very complex question to ask, I guess.
Status is like the only workaround being short, right? Like, yeah, like Danny DeVito, I'm sure could do quite well if you.
Oh yeah, yeah. Status. It is status, man. Yeah.
It's status. That's like if you're really short or really ugly, yeah, status is going to be like your the thing that bridges the gap for you.
Got you. Okay. So, once you've done the profile customization, you're starting to get matches. What are your go-to opening lines?
The one I'm like most known for is "Hey Trouble." Like that's like kind of a meme at this point.
Okay.
The best kind of opener is going to be like a unique observation based on her photos. That has the highest response rate, so something custom. So if like I don't know if she has like glasses, you can be like, "I like your sexy nerd glasses," like just like a observation based on her profile. But like standard openers, we've done experiments where we've like tested each opener like 20 times, and we have like data on this on our website. But I think I'm trying to remember which one came out at top. I have to go through the experiment, but yeah, we've like tested like 10 or 20 of the most popular openers, and we kind of ranked them. But at the end of the day, the highest success rate opener is going to be something custom based on her photos.
Got you. Okay. So I think we covered pretty much everything there is to cover about online dating, bro. But we got through it, man. I fucking packed those questions in, dude. That was good. We just squeezed all the drops out of that. Before we go to like other types of dating, what do you see as the future of online dating? Because it's getting competitive every year. The SJWs are influencing the use of the platform. What predictions do you have? What trends do you see happening? What apps do you see, taking over others, and what apps do you see going under? What do you think?
Yeah. Well, the general prediction I have is that the guys at the very top are going to keep getting more and more, and that's going to leave less for the guys at the bottom 80. So kind of like with money, the rich get richer, the poor get poor, the wealth gap widens. I think it's like that with pussy. So I think that's going to keep happening more unless something really drastic happens in society, like some kind of legislation, which is not, like, that's not going to happen. No senator's going to be like, okay, we're going to pass the Pussy for All Act, like that's just not going to happen. So yeah, I think that's the gap is going to keep widening, and the guys that like the top 0.1, like the celebrities and the DJs, they're like they're already getting a lot, but they're going to get even more. Like they're going to have more girls than they know what to do with, and then that's going to leave less for like the bottom. So that's something I see happening. And I've made a video on this where I talk about like potential solutions for guys, but yeah, that's a trend I see in terms of which apps are going to like take over. It's so hard to say. In like 2 years, there might be like a brand new app that doesn't exist now that dominates the market, or it could still be like the same three. I really have like, I'm not sure about that. Like, I think Instagram is going to become more and more popular as potentially a dating app. Maybe Instagram will even release like a dating feature like Facebook did. Because a lot of people do use Instagram as a dating platform or app. So I see that getting more, but yeah, in terms of new apps, I'm not really sure. Like, I want to build my own app like in the next few years. I have some pretty interesting ideas.
You had some suggestions you said that would improve dating apps potentially. Okay, so you're the CEO of Tinder. Obviously, the way Tinder makes money is getting men to spend more money on the platform, right? So that's going to be the overall mission. But would there be a way to get men to spend equally as much money on these dating apps, but have more success? And how would that look like? How would you do that?
Yeah, well, the tricky thing with dating apps is like you also have to be largely favorable to women, because then the men come for the women, and the women are very fickle, and they can just go to a different platform, right? So really, you're appealing to the women, not the men, because the men will come anyway, right? If there's a lot of women on there. The idea that I had, is to combine the idea of Yelp and a dating app. So like have like a review type of system, right? So you can, and I think why that is good is because a lot of women, the reason they don't meet up with strangers is because of like, they're like, oh, I don't know this person. I don't feel comfortable with them. Versus if it's a friend of a friend, they'll meet up with them, right? So what if like girls can see reviews for guys with other girls that he's gone out with, so they feel more comfortable meeting up with the guy? And then the guys can read reviews about the girls, so they know she's not a flake, or she's not a time waster, or she's not a secret fatty, right? So that's kind of the general idea I had. It's going to be obviously hard to execute, because like, what about like racist people, right? Like, what about, oh, I'd never go out with an N-word, like, like shit like that. Like, you can't have that,
right.
Or like, oh, this bitch didn't fuck, like, so. But then also you don't want to limit free speech. So
that's true.
It's a really good idea. It's definitely harder to execute, but that's kind of like the thought process I had.
I'd say you're mostly known as like an online dating expert, but you actually do have a lot of videos where you go and do approaches in field, where you go up and talk to strangers, which somebody actually gave me a lot of advice the other day. They said something along the lines of like, Jack, we love your product, but like it forces people to actually leave their house and talk to girls. Whereas, an online dating product, there's way less friction, way more convenience. As somebody who's done both, what would you say is harder? What would you say is more effective? And between the two, what would you say, has less friction, I suppose?
This may seem like a lame answer, but it really depends on the person. Like if you're someone who's like naturally, photogenic, but you don't have good social skills, for example, then maybe, dating apps will be the clear winner. Well, let's say you're really charismatic and talkative, but you're like not photogenic or whatever.
We're talking like the average guy. He's got good photos, but he's a 6. And, even though he's gaming the system as much as he can, there's so many other guys he's competing with on the app versus in real life, I guess. I mean, yeah, that kind of gave away the answer, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, I don't think the thing is, I don't think one is better or worse than the other. And like, I think it will just depend on what city he's in, how good his cold approach skills are. Like, look, if you have really good cold approach skills, then cold approach can be like a fucking, like really killer way of meeting girls. But if you have really bad cold approach skills, it can also be a really bad way of meeting girls, right? So your skill level really matters with that. So I unfortunately, I don't have like a clear answer, like which one to focus on. I would say try both and see which one gives you the better ROI. But also you can realistically do both and not like that time consuming. Like once you get the good photos, everything else is pretty easy. Like you can use, like I use assistants to do all my messaging for me. So I'm not really spending any time like actually messaging girls. It's like very easy. But obviously, I think online.
Well, yeah,
dating,
that's some advanced tier shit though. I don't know how many guys can hire VAs and photographers and tweak their shit to a level where it could be automated, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously online is going to have a lower level of friction because you're just sitting inside, but it's also going to have higher competition. Cold approach, obviously, you have to leave your house, you have to like talk to girls, you have to be social. Obviously, requires massive initiative, but you're going to have less competition. So it's like pros and cons.
Got you. Okay, because I shit on people all the time for using online dating, and not because they're optimizing it as a healthy part of their lifestyle, but because that's all they do. They don't approach it all. They don't have status. They don't have friends. All they're doing, like the only dating effort they make is going on dating apps. And essentially what that boils down to is laziness, right? And, a lot of the people that haven't ever approached, like they wouldn't even know if they would be better at online dating versus real life because they haven't tried it. So, for me, like online dating as a topic, it's a punching bag to get like, engagement in TikToks, like, online dating's for lazy people, right? But in reality, once you optimize it and automate it, you could be on it only 10 minutes a day. But, I'm not talking about the Alexes of the world. I'm talking about the average guy that's falling into the same traps, I guess, that most people do. And I think that there's so much resistance in regards to going out and talking to people in real life because it's hard, man. You move to a new city, you have to go make new friends. And then you also have to make friendships with women as opposed to just trying to bang every girl you meet. And then you have to be likable enough that you get invited out to stuff. And then when you do go out to these environments, you have to have the social calibration to find out, okay, who is a friend, who is somebody that's already in a relationship, who is somebody I can hit on that, is far enough from the circle that I'm not making it weird because it's my coworker. There's all these different things that are taken into consideration. But I think that the level in which somebody can go from being, not doing in real life stuff to being very charismatic, having lots of status, I think that the gap that can be crossed is much more significant than online dating because on online dating, you can still make a tremendous improvement. But I would say that there's like a couple points you can max out. And what I mean by that is like at the end of the day, in online dating, there's only a limited amount of things you can show, right? You could be the funniest guy ever, but I don't know that. I don't know how good you are at parties. I don't know how deep your voice is. I don't know if you have really calm composure and relaxed body language. All I know is, okay, let's assume all the photos are great, great photos, perfect bio, all that. All I really know is, hopefully I know how tall you are. I kind of know your status, your occupation, but every dude is putting entrepreneur, right? So that's almost a meme, right? If you put entrepreneur, people be like, what does that even mean? Yeah. And then I guess, obviously the physical attraction, the body type and whatnot. But in real life, there's so many more things that you can show. So I guess, it's equally important though for online dating guys to know all this stuff as well, because what happens when they get a match and they go on a date and then what? You know what I mean? Or, they go out and they hang out with a girl, but it's clear that they're failing all these shit tests and they're not really socially calibrated. And what's funny, man, is that a lot of my clients, they're like 6'4" chads, good looking guys, but they're totally fucking socially reclusive. And like they go out to bars and nightclubs, girls come up to them and then they start talking to them and then the girls leave, right? Because they just don't have those skills. So I know a little bit of your origin story, how you used to be kind of socially awkward and then you transitioned through just repetition over years and learning and whatnot. What are some of the things that you see the differences, I guess, between online dating versus real life dating, and I guess pros and cons of both, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely pros and cons to both. And I think which one is going to be superior really depends on where you're at in life and what your goals are. So if your goal is to improve your social skills, then cold approach is definitely going to be better for that, right, than online. But, if you're working 50, 60 hours a week, right, you don't have time to do cold approach. Maybe you can squeeze like 2 approaches in a week. Then, online, it's definitely going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So, I just think it really depends on like, one, what your goals are, and two, what your life situation is. Like if you have a lot of free time, that's totally different than someone who has like no free time. Pros and cons, I think that, yes, like you said, with cold approach, you get to like really show off a wide array of your personality and you can show off more things. But the problem is your exposure is limited. So meaning like, in an hour you can talk to like 5 girls, right? Online you can show your profile to 500 girls in the span of 1 hour, right? So your exposure is a lot bigger, even though your individual ROI per girl is lower, right? Like let's say you can either, like let's say if you talk to a girl in real life, you have like a 50% chance of getting her number. If she sees your profile, maybe you have a 5% chance of getting her number, right? Yeah, that's true. But you get to be shown to a lot more girls, right? So then that could compensate for that, or it could not. It really depends on how good your profile is, right? So does it, intercede and like kind of compensate for that? Depends on your profile, your area, a lot of factors. But yeah, another pro that I like with cold approach is that you don't get catfish. You know what the girl looks like. You get to feel out her personality. I think that, yeah, that's one. I think that you might be able to get a higher caliber of girls from cold approach if you have good skills, although I've gotten some really hot girls from online too. But if you have like really good skills, I think you could get like, you could punch significantly above your sexual market value versus with online. That's a little tougher.
Got you. Okay. A lot of guys will come to me and they're like, yeah, man, I work, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. I don't have time to go and approach women. And I feel like guys that say that they don't actually have time, they do have time, but it's just an excuse, right? Mm-hmm. And, you got to take into consideration the other things in their life, right? Like video games. Are they going to the gym? How many hours a day are they on their phone? It's a very easy cop out to say like they don't have time. And what I argue is a lot of these guys that are working 50 to 60 hours a week, they're not working 50 to 60 hours a week on their passion or their business. They're working 50 to 60 hours a week on a career that long-term probably isn't going to fulfill them, probably isn't going to give them the freedom that they want in order to live the lifestyle they want, which could include having lots of options and dating lots of women. So what I mean is like the symptom isn't necessarily even the dating app or cold approach itself, but it's that this person is concerned about dating while they only have 2 hours a week to actually spend on dating. What you should be doing is if you're going to be going 50, 60 hours a week on your business, you should be going 70, 80 hours a week on your business and, setting it up so that, okay, you have 1 day a week off every couple of weeks or date. I think that people are putting the carriage before the horse. If you've ever heard that term, yeah. I think that a lot of people that are online dating and having a lack of success with it, they should be focused more so on, I don't want to go too red pill with, oh, it's all just money or, you need to be doing this or that. But dating is something that is so much easier and has so much less resistance when you have your life sorted out, right? And most of the guys that I think that are struggling on these dating apps and with cold approach, the biggest actual reason isn't because their photos aren't great or it isn't because of, the app is broken or whatever. It's because they don't actually have time in their life and they're half-assing it because they only have 30 minutes at the end of the day. So I know, how often do you have guys where you recommend them, look, man, you should just get off of dating altogether, stop focusing on it, and then do this for a couple months and then go back to dating when you have more time, you have a better lifestyle to begin with, you have more social status, more social skills, better, you can hire a better photographer to take some nasty photos of you. You kind of get what
I know exactly what you're saying, and that makes sense. But I think the important thing to keep in mind is that when guys go a long period of time without getting laid, it takes usually a mental toll on their health. So like I can tell you, like back when I was like kind of simpy Alex, like that would like I couldn't actually focus on my like passions because like pussy was like so like I don't know it's like a need, right? Like you can't really focus on like if you're like really thirsty, you can't really focus on anything else, right? You won't die from like not getting laid, but it depends on who you are, but can definitely take a mental toll on your health. So I have a hard time telling the guys, hey, take 3-4 months off when I'm like myself, I can't even take 3-4 months off getting laid because that would like that would be hard on me. So right, so I don't know. It's
that's like actually, that's a good point. I guess everybody's different. Like some guys can go a long.
Some guys can, but a lot of guys like they literally can't even like focus on their business because this is just such a need. And then once they can just get laid, like I've had many clients who are like, dude, like I'm actually, you didn't tell me anything about my business, but I'm actually making more money. I was like, oh, how come? He's like, well, now that I started getting laid, I can actually like focus on my business. Like I was just sitting there all day, like trying not to fap, but like I'm sort of fapping. Like, I don't know, like they were like going crazy. And now I'm getting laid. I have a booty call. I can be relaxed and I can actually focus on like what I care about.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I will say this too. Like I have certain friends that once they got a girlfriend at first, in order to keep that girlfriend and, attract her in the first place, they had to have their shit together.
Yeah.
So they were doing all the right things. But then throughout the relationship, since they got it, now they go down. That's an interesting point, though. Yeah, some guys, I guess when it comes down to is like discipline, but also, like ADHD. Everybody has ADHD now, because TikTok and Instagram and our brains are just addicted to information. We're basically caveman with phones, but that's a whole other thing. As far as your experience meeting women in real life, what would you say for those that do like to or want to try, meeting in real life from your point of view, different than, I guess, my style, in your own style? Like, what is your preferred way of meeting women in real life? Where, what time of day, what do you open with? Everything. Just tell me
I think our style. I think our styles are actually quite similar. We're both kind of cocky, funny, confident, pretty straightforward. So I don't think our styles are actually radically different or anything.
Okay.
Yeah, what do I prefer? I don't know. Like, I mean, sometimes I prefer day games. Sometimes I prefer going to a bar. They have their pros and cons.
Yeah. So compare day game and club game in Miami.
Well, I never go to clubs. I hate clubs.
Or sorry, bar game.
Yeah, I'll go to a bar. Day game girls might be more receptive, but more of them are going to have boyfriends. When you go to a bar, that's less common.
But like also a social contract kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of. But also, a little bit. But also at a bar, you're way more likely to get a cock block from one of her friends versus daytime. That's not really going to happen because she's usually by herself. Mm-hmm. Pros and cons. I think like if you were like, dude, like I'll pay you $100,000 if you can get laid in 24 hours. Like I think I probably would pick bars for that. Like I think that's probably a little bit more efficient. But I find sometimes day game more enjoyable because it's not as loud, blah, blah, blah. So again, like kind of pros and cons. But I do think probably the ROI is better at like a chill bar or a lounge. I think also it's the timing makes a difference. A lot of guys make the mistake to go out like 12:30 or 1 a.m. That's already like every girl who's DTF has already been picked up usually by that point. The best time to, in my opinion, to go out, at least in Miami, is like 6 or 7 p.m. Right? A little bit earlier for like happy hour. And that's usually when you get the best ratio. Girls are the most receptive because they haven't been approached that many times. So I think just like the timing for which you go to the bars can make like a huge difference. Like that could be a game changer right there.
Yeah. So that was like the nugget that I was looking for because, I know it's different for everybody, but that's actually a really good point. To jump onto the bar thing though, have you noticed the difference between when you've gone out with a group of guy friends, a group of girlfriends, a group of both, and by yourself? And if so, what are the differences of success or failure?
Yeah, I've done all of those, but I haven't been out by myself in ages. It's just like less fun for me. So I'd so much rather.
Well, it's way more work. Yeah.
Yeah, I just so much rather. Like I think at this point, I'm not going to go out by myself. I just don't care enough. I'd rather like at that point call my girlfriend over or something. So for me going out, like, like why do we do any of the things we do? We do it for pleasure and to have fun. And for me, like a big part of the fun is just like fucking around with my friends. And if I don't have that, then it's like, it's not worth it for me to get dressed and to like go out and deal with all that shit. I'll usually bring my dog out because that makes things more fun too. But so wait, what was the initial question? Oh, which one of those? Yeah, I think like going out with a few good guy friends, like guys who are motivated, guys who are positive. That's a big one. Like you don't want to go out with guys who are complaining. That could be a huge thing. That can take like a big toll on your like vibe. Like if the guy's
don't do that, bro.
Yeah, if the guy's complaining like, oh, bro, it fucking sucks here. I'm guilty of that to some small extent myself sometimes. Like sometimes I do complain too. But generally speaking, you don't want that. You want to go out with guys who are positive. That's one of the biggest things I look for in a wing. I don't really care about the skill level that much as long as they're like not socially retarded completely. I don't really care. It's more to me about their attitude and level of positivity. I'd rather go out with a guy who's like a beginner, who's not completely like, if they're completely socially retarded, that's one thing, but who's like a normal person, right? But they're a beginner, but they're really positive, than a guy who's advanced, who's negative, like all day, every day. I would pick the beginner guy.
Gotcha.
So I think your choice of wings matters. Going out with girls, yeah, as long as they're the right kind of girls. I mean, the thing is most of the girls I know I hook up with. So it's like, unless we're going for the threesome, it's like, I'm not going to like go out with them, like rub it in their face.
Like you're not going out with them as friends. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a very,
that totally makes sense because it's social proof. The girl thinks you're safe. You can have the female introduce you for sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense to me.
Flipping the script here, we got the online dating out of the way. What have your experiences been lately with, I peeped your channel and I see you're doing like 3 fucking debates a week with like SJW this, SJW that. What kind of inspired you to start debating all these people? And, what have you noticed some of the commonalities you see between the people you debate are?
I got into debates purely accidentally. It actually happened when I was doing a podcast with Kevin Ray Wilder. I don't remember if we were on his channel or my channel, but basically someone was like, yo, I want to debate you guys. And Kevin's like, yo, you want to debate this guy? I was like, oh, I've never done a debate, but sure. And we did it and it was a lot of fun. So I was like, oh, fuck yeah. So I started doing more of that. And I think it's really missing in the manosphere. Very few people who think differently. Like usually when people do podcasts, it's always like people who think the same as you, which is fun. But like, it's also important, I think, to talk to people in your community who think completely differently than you, right? I think that creates very interesting discussions, a different kind of discussion than someone who thinks similar than you, right?
What would you say are like the biggest talking points that you're debating though? Like what are the common things people come into, like the misconceptions they have that you have to like debunk? And not about you in particular, but about dating, men and women, that kind of thing.
There's 2 categories that primarily I debate, and one is black pillars and one is like SJWs. And the misconceptions they have are totally different, right? So the black pillars think I'm too hard on men, right? They think that I don't acknowledge enough how hard it is to be a man, that I don't acknowledge the man's struggle enough. Versus the SJWs, they think I'm like, whatever, I'm like too hard on women, right? So it's so funny to watch these sides argue the complete opposite. And they argue like passionately. With the black pillars,
yeah, what are the common themes of the black pillars that you have to debunk?
They think that game doesn't work. That's all about looks, right? Everything is looks. If you're not a Chad, you're fucked. And like some of these black pillars are better looking than me, but they get like no results. And like quite often it's because their approach sucks and their attitude sucks. So victim mindset is a huge one I see in the black pill community. They just feel like they're a victim, right? And that's really bad for your mental health. With the SJWs, they think that what I'm doing is manipulation, that it's like tricking the woman into sex. It's like, like whatever, like pushing or pressuring the woman into something. So you have to like explain that, like, listen, like women like sex. What I'm doing is creating a situation where that can happen. I'm not like manipulating her into doing something she doesn't want to do. She already wants to do it, but it's still up to me to take the lead and create a situation where that kind of thing can happen, right? It's not going to happen on its own. So that's a big one. That like a lot of the SJWs, they're like arguing against like a version of me that doesn't even exist. They're arguing against like this version that believes that women shouldn't have rights and that we should live in the 1950s, which are like none of the things I actually believe. So they're completely like arguing against the straw man version of me that doesn't exist.
Gotcha. Here's a curveball for you. Have there been any debates or discussions that you went into and they said something that you're like, you know what? You're kind of right. Like, I didn't even look at it that way. Like, has that ever happened to you where you're like, fuck, they are right about this?
Maybe on very small points, not on any big points. There was no big epiphanies. Maybe some very small points that I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how you would take it that way, but nothing like major.
You have this new program that you just put together, which I imagine is like a compilation of everything you've ever done. What's it called? When's it coming out? Tell us about that.
I don't believe in like having like 5 or 10 different products. I try to like, provide a lot of value for free. And then if someone wants like even more value, I have like one thing that they can get, like no upsells, no cross sells. It's just like, hey, this is what you pay for and you get everything, right? So basically we created our first product in 2017. It was called the Online Dating Blueprint. And it was like every single possible thing I knew about online dating and more, like all these bonuses that I had in there, like, for example, how to get jacked, right? We had a personal trainer write a guide, how to step up your fashion. We had a fashion consultant write a bonus chapter. We did a lot of stuff like that, right? But this was like 5 years ago. So we knew I had to update it because things changed in the last 4 or 5 years. But then I wound up going like 20 steps further and like really, really like revamping this and making this like new product like 3 times bigger. So that's what we did. And we called it the Ultimate Dating Blueprint 2.0. It's already on pre-sale. It's being officially released July 1st. It includes like every possible thing that you can imagine times 10, with the exception of cold approach. We don't have much about cold approach in there. But aside from cold approach, we have like, how to get matches, how to text girls, how to set up rotations, how to get a girlfriend, how to keep your girlfriend around, how to become a better man, how to improve your inner game. how to change your mindsets. We even have like a fucking tutorial on how to eat pussy. Like we actually have a real life demonstration of my business partner eating a girl out. And then we do like, he does like a live breakdown. So like we run like super OCD detail in there, several years worth of research, several months worth of writing and editing. After that, I mean, I think I'm going to be like, I'm not going to release any new products for like several years after that. I think I'll be set. So after that, I'm going to start working on some of the apps I want to work on.
I know that you've been in Miami for a minute. Would you ever fuck around with like Bali, Mexico, Dubai? Would you ever go there for a couple months at a time, just like flip things up?
I would like to. I have like some health issues that require me to be in the US. So until I get those addressed, I don't have the luxury of moving to another country. But if it wasn't for that, I would definitely live in like Medellin, Colombia, or like Bali, or like one of those places for sure.
Guys, if you want to hear more from Alex, be sure to go check out the episode me and him did on his profile. We did a podcast a couple of weeks ago, way down the rabbit hole. It was awesome. This one was much more rapid fire questions about online dating, but thanks for coming on, man. And we'll have to have you back on again.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, for sure, man. I think we got a lot of good stuff in this podcast. Yeah, that was like the most I've ever shared in the shortest amount of period. So that was good.
Buddy, yeah, I drank fucking 3 coffees before. That's why.